participants. I'd like to thank the faculty team reposing confidence in me to discuss this topic. It's a sensitive topic about civil-military relations in Pakistan. I had two DSs, Sir Fareed and then Sir Ateek, and both of them guided me and gave me a lot of leverage because very few people are ready to talk about it. And most of those who talked about it on the condition of non-attribution. This is the statement of problem. Dissonance and disjointness has led to less than optimal and disastrous results, sometimes disastrous, most of the times less than optimal results in Pakistan's national security policy. Is Pakistan today better than any time of its history as far as its national security policy is concerned? Are the apex committees a model for the rest of Pakistan? Means, can they be replicated at the central level? The scope would limit to these three things. It would not include the institutional or psychological causes of the behavior of the military or the civil or the civil society, in this case the political civil leadership. Neither would it discuss internal structures. Samuel Huntington's work relates to the US mostly and talks about objective civilian control. Works in a presidential system only, not very relevant to us. Very valuable book by Akil. He was in Columbia when I was in Georgetown. The only problem that I see, it tells you about the institutional mindset of the military, how it came to be made like it was. But the book overall blames the military for everything. And sometimes theoretical concepts are very confusing in it. A military man's rendition of our own military, very elegant, smart book, but this is biased against civilians. He thinks of politicians like our Khakis do. One of the most vicious books against Pakistan. Unfortunately, Christine Fair was given a scholarship by some of our institutions to visit Pakistan, and what she has produced is a blatant diatribe against Pakistan's army as well as Pakistan itself. Corey Scofield was embedded in a Pakistan army unit for 1 year, and she tells you about the operations and other things, known as a pro-Pakistan book. One of the finest accounts still by a civil servant of the police service, now in the School of Foreign Service in Washington, D.C. It talks to you directly. A very big book by General Asif Nawaz's brother. It tells you about every war, every battle plans, maps and everything, valuable in that respect. Very difficult to find sources for apex committees. Nobody wants to talk about apex committees at all because they feel it's a secretive subject. So these were the sources I talked about. Even Dr. Malia Lodi said, please don't write my name, but I'm taking the liberty. The word dissonance here means disparity, discord, disharmony, conflict. This word is going to define civil-military relations as I see it. Disjointed is incoherent. You take two parallel tracks, you never meet. These are two streams that never meet, and you find out when a disaster takes place. This is something that I don't want to do. I do not want to self-flagellate Pakistan. As I'm going to tell you, that this is not something that was born out of our policy choices. I'm going to tell you that Pakistan has done pretty well, and that there were internal and external circumstances that were unmanageable for us. You should know that the initial date of partition was June 1948. It was brought forward to 14th August 1947. Paban din mein ek mulk banana tha. This was a state when the Congress rejected the cabinet mission plan. This is now a proven fact. This was a state that was not meant to survive. The 3rd June plan, there are statements now, I'll give you others. This was a state that was that was to be put into an incubator and made to beg to come join Mother India again. This man is the Advocate General of Maharashtra and another state, one of the finest judicial minds of India. The whole book is written to tell you that Pakistan was meant to die. He writes, and you'll find that nowadays Indians are coming forward at the fag ends of their lives and telling you that Jinnah was right. So probably it's Zamir. I asked Sir Saad about this. He'll probably answer me later on. Beaumont was Ratcliffe's secretary. Ratcliffe is above, Beaumont is down. And he tells you that on 14th August at a lunch, Firozpur, Zira and Gurdaspur were taken away from Pakistan and given to India. If you look at this map, just look at the change of population and look at the size of Pakistan and look at the size of India. So the date was very important, and that led to Pakistan's struggle for survival, which led to the military being dominant in state affairs. And this is what he says: as clear as the light that Pakistan was given a rotten coin here before his death. All his archives were found by his son down below. In pages written after it, and Pakistan was done in. Pakistan ke saath zulm hua. Democratic consolidation cannot take place for a child who is in an incubator. The first instinct is to save the child. And that's what Ashish Jalal says in the state of martial rule. So you had all these problems, and then you had the Kashmir conflict. And you solved it in 49, but there was a core of military officers who thought you should not have signed the ceasefire with India. General Akbar Khan, one of them, and this group of officers led to this impression that politicians were all bad, they would not protect the national interest of Pakistan. The other problem, which you hear all the time, Pakistan ka constitution nahi bana, and that's one of the big reasons that you had musical chairs in the 50s and abomination and nafrat towards the politician. But let me tell you, it was a monstrous task to make a constitution for a country whose western wing was bigger, whose eastern wing was more populous, far away, 1,000 miles. How could you create an upper house for such a state? Making a constitution for India was 1,000 times easier than making a constitution for Pakistan. And so gradually, Ayub consolidated, first field marshal, a fine man, and the politicians' musical chairs kept on playing because you did not have a constitution. Ayub started having his own foreign policy. Here he is with two American presidents, close to the presidents. All US aid that started coming in the 50s consolidated Pakistan's military institutions at the cost of its civil institutions. 1953, you had martial law in Lahore, and General Azam won the hearts of the people of Lahore. Again, a wrong conception that the military can do everything in 1 minute. It's far more complex than that. Seato Sento, strengthening father of the Pakistan military, called many Greek fabled names by the Western world because of his reform policy. But then lies a problem here. Because this is a separate path of policy making. This is Chaudhry Muhammad Ali, who gave you the first constitution of Pakistan. And you know what keeps states together? It's not the military. It's that piece of document which you call the Constitution of Pakistan. The hyphen that binds, the comma that joins, the 1956 Constitution, 9 saal ke baad bani. But he had already thought in 1954 that I'm going to do away with the parliamentary system. And he don't talk. He and the politicians don't talk. So you got the first constitution, you were ready for it, no elections, and it was disbanded. Here was the man who could have kept Pakistan together till 1971, Hussain Shahid Sohrawardi. He was destined to become the first Prime Minister under elections under the 1956 Constitution. So because of a reform idea generated in a British hotel, and because there is no policy making, the individual ideas based on myths and other things, you did away with the 56 Constitution, you did away with Suharwardi to have a great Pakistan. So in the 1962 Constitution, the Lord of all lords, you have a country 1,000 miles apart and it is a unitary form of government. I mean, you get a BS student of political science, he would tell you this is not the case. That you had to have either a confederal or a federal form of system. Resource transfer, all of East Pakistan under Ayub's great system, all of East Pakistan was disenfranchised, out of decision making. Great man, good intentions. The economy, this is Gustav Papanek of the Harvard School. The Harvard School said, invest where you can get a profit and where you can get development. All of that in West Pakistan ke bhi sirf kuch areas hai. So you had a vertical difference in people and a horizontal between East and West. Exacerbated. So when 1968 happened, it was waiting to happen. 1965 war, now you're going to war. And who is deciding about the war? The Foreign Secretary Aziz Ahmed, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, the flamboyant Foreign Minister, and General Akhtar Hussain Malik. Ayub was not on board, he was forced to go on board. General Musa is out of decision making. And then, although it was a flawed decision making, you could have won the war on 2nd September. And then suddenly out of the blue, when you're going to take Ahnur right here, there's a change of command. The war brain is replaced with a new man, middle of the war. Indian history, Indian military history says, we don't know what happened to the Pakistanis. How was this decision made? In the mind of Ayub, or had a Western leader called? Again, a flawed model of decision making. Many of you wouldn't know this. Yahya Khan then wanted to be the world's greatest diplomat, so he arranged for Kissinger to go to China when? In July 1971. I'm not condemning anybody. I'm telling you about military civil decision making. He arranged that. China had its window, but at that exact moment, the USSR decided that it's going to teach Pakistan a lesson. There had been the U2 incident. Usne kaha, you're trying to coalesce my two enemies together. 1971, you had an election. Leave everything. Just leave everything. You should have shifted the leaders into the Constituent Assembly of Pakistan in Dhaka by force, by chains, put them inside and ask them to find a constitutional formula. What do? You do sort of conspiratory decision making. Kabhi ladka na chale gaya, kabhi kuch ho gaya. Then the Bhutto years, not very relevant, good things happened. Defense Committee of the Cabinet, highest level consultations. And then Zia hosted the civilians and made Pakistan the base camp for Afghan jihad. Junejo came, and then again, dissonance. All decisions made by a coterie of army officers, handpicked Prime Minister, dismissed because of the things you know very well. Then the 90s, you had these two taking turns as Prime Ministers, you had these military chiefs, and the office of the President was used via Article 58(2)(b) under the 8th Amendment to dismiss governments on the military's behest. Again and again, corruption. Again, what is the defining thing? It's mistrust and dissonance between civilian and military leaders. Kargil, I mean, a decision that had been on the files for 9 years had been rejected by many civilian prime ministers, including Prime Minister Junaid. You eventually went in. These were the four people. Benazir Junaid had rejected it, but you went in. And the problem is, you went in when he had travelled to Minar-e-Pakistan. I mean, can you have a state that has totally dissonant foreign policies? The BJP leader comes to Minar-e-Pakistan, you go into Kargil. Total dissonance. these, it was tactically great. We had them by the throat, but what next? And then when Musharraf Saab went